the paper that I prepared and handed out to you, I wasn't so concerned about the introduction as I was that you be able to see the parallel accounts in the Bible to the same story that is being told. And I tried to lay it out. Actually, I didn't lay it out for you. I laid it out for me because I thought it would be helpful to me. And I used it, and after we got it done, I thought it might be useful to you as well. I want you to turn to Isaiah 37, and we're going to read verses 30 through the end of the chapter. It records one of the most significant miracles of the Old Testament in the sense that it was witnessed by so many people, and yet it tells about a very significant miracle when 185,000 people were put to death by God. And let's begin with verse 30 and read down to the end of the chapter. Isaiah had received a letter, not Isaiah, but Hezekiah had received a letter from Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sent by one of his underlings, Rabshakeh. And when Isaiah got the letter, it was so graphic telling about what's going to happen, he didn't know what to do. And so he took the letter into the temple, and here's God's response to it.
What chapter is it, Mike? I'm sorry.
Isaiah 37, beginning at verse 30. This shall be the sign for you. This year you shall eat what grows of itself, and in the second year what springs from that. Then in the third year sow and reap, and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. And the surviving remnant of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go a remnant, and out of Mount Zion a band of survivors. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. With them being surrounded by Assyrian soldiers, their very existence was imperiled. And so he says, therefore thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city or shoot an arrow there, or come before it with a shield, or cast up a siege mound against it. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return, and he shall not come into this city, declares the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David. And so in these final verses, here's what happened. And the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when people arose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies. Then Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and returned home and lived at Nineveh. And as he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch, his god, Adremelech and Sharezer, his sons, struck him down with the sword. And after that they escaped into the land of Arad. Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his place. Now, when you read some of the commentaries that are being written about Isaiah, you'll find that it's treated as if this is something that didn't really happen. And what was going on with the Assyrian domination of the Middle East, it had started in 900 BC and lasted all the way down to 600, 50 years longer than the United States has been existing. And I can understand why, because of the cruelty of these people and how they governed. How that Jonah did not want to go and preach to them and see any Assyrians saved. But Assyria had conquered the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, in 722 BC. It took them 3 years for them to siege and starve the people down to the point that they had no alternatives. And when that happened, King Shalmaneser came in and took it. In the process of the time, I don't know what caused his death, but he died during the end of it. And his son, Sargon II, had to come in and finish up the taking of it. And he got a lot of credit that really belonged to his father. This left Judah by itself. And in 701, which is just what, 21 years later, that same group comes to attack the little nation of Judah. And Hezekiah was the king that was on the throne at the time. There was an alignment of nations, as you could not beat the Assyrians by yourself. And in the 7th chapter of Isaiah, he tells about Pekah and Rezin of Syria trying to overthrow King Ahaz of Judah so that they could put a puppet king on the throne and be able to attack, joining in an attack against Assyria. And Isaiah told Ahaz, just don't do anything, just stay quiet, because this is just a smoking firebrand. And he couldn't do that. He acted anyway, and he paid allegiance to the Assyrians. And within just a very short time, the Assyrians destroyed Pekah and Rezin and moved on to the destruction of the nation a little later. King Ahaz had the same issue that King Hezekiah had. Both of them were in problems of this great, powerful nation coming in and threatening them. And the same prophet told both of them, you wait and let God take care of it. Ahaz didn't listen. And after his death, Hezekiah joined part of the rebellion to try to overthrow the Assyrians themselves 21 years later. Hezekiah was neck deep in conspiracy at the time it happened. The Assyrians had conquered many of the nations, but one of the things that happened, he had appointed a king at Ekron, and because that king, named Padi, P-A-D-I, would not support the rebellion, they arrested him and put him in prison in Jerusalem. Hezekiah had withheld paying his tribute to the Assyrians, and later we'll see where he offers to pay it, but it's too late at that time, and they're going to impose a higher tribute on him. He also sent messengers down to Egypt and tried to secure the help of the Egyptian armies themselves. By the time we get into this area of what we're studying in 36 and 37, King Sennacherib brags about what he's already done. He's already captured 46 cities in Judah. Now you just think how bad that would work if we had 46 cities taken from Indiana. Now these might be villages as small as Jamestown or as large as Anderson. We wouldn't know. But he said, I got 46 cities captured, and out of them I am taking 200,150 citizens into exile. Now, Judah is not a very big kingdom already, but you take out 200,000 people that go into exile, and I'm going to tell you, you've lost 46 cities and that many people, you don't have much left. And so he's in a pickle, we would say. But he was a very smart man, and he was actively preparing Judah for war. In the statements that are made in Isaiah chapter 37, the Assyrian Rabshakeh comes in and tells Hezekiah, and the way it's presented in Isaiah is that the men from the Assyrian army are standing outside the gates, and you've got the walls lined with Judean people, and they're hearing this conversation go on. And Isaiah's people say, speak to us in your Assyrian language. They didn't want their own people hearing what was being said. The Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria fighting against Libnah, for he had heard that the king had left Lachish. Now the king heard concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush. Now stop just a minute. Cush, if you look at the map of Africa, the northern part is Egypt. And as you go further south, it's going south, but it's called upriver because the equator's got the waters running a different direction from down there. And he's from that upriver area. I think about the place where the first cataract occurs. And he says, he set out to fight against you. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, thus shall you speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah. Do not let your God, in whom you trust, deceive you by promising that Jerusalem will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. And so when the Rabshakeh is there making his speech, he's telling the people on the wall, don't think that Hezekiah is going to be delivered because he had Tirhakah come. Well, this is one of those places where those who don't believe the inspiration of Scripture think, aha, we found a contradiction in this. One of the great historians of Bible history is John Bright, and he was of that liberal persuasion, and he said that the text mistakenly assigned Tirhakah to this period when he was only 9 years old. Well, more recently, Kenneth A. Kitchen, in a book called On the Reliability of the Old Testament, he said in the biblical occurrences, Tirhakah is accorded the title king simply because that title had been his and was universally used for 10 years already by the 681 BC, when the texts of 2 Kings and Isaiah took their present shape. And so what he's saying is that Tirhakah was not the king at the time he went up under the army. He was only a lieutenant in the army. But it's like me saying, back when President Lincoln was born in Kentucky, he wasn't president when he was born in Kentucky. But we say that because it makes sense, because he later became that. And so that put a problem to sleep that hasn't been raised anymore. The biblical account of the miraculous deliverance. Sennacherib sends a letter threatening to destroy Jerusalem. And when Hezekiah received it, he went in to the temple and presented it before the Lord. And as we just read a few moments ago, this was the Lord's response. And then he followed that up with the miraculous deliverance. And here's the question. Did that really happen? And you've got all these unbelievers saying this is just a figment of somebody's imagination to glorify Israel. But let's look at the biblical evidence. First of all, let's look at the Isaiah account. There is nobody that questions whether Isaiah was a prophet that lived in the 7th to 8th century BC. And they all agree that he's the one that wrote this book. Now you have, with that omission, an eyewitness participating in the events that he himself was part of, giving evidence. This is not like somebody writing Three Little Pigs. It's like what Matthew wrote about Jesus and what John wrote about Jesus. You've got an eyewitness testimony there. What I showed you in the paper that I handed out to you were two other accounts of this same event. The first one is 2 Kings 18 through 19. And I said the date of 561 is the earliest it could have been written. And the reason I said that, because that's the date when the last event recorded in 2 Kings occurred. And that's how I arrived at this date. But what they were doing in their own mind, they were writing a history of the kings of Israel. Their intention was not to just glorify God by exaggerations, but it was to write what happened to Israel's history. The third account comes from 2 Chronicles, and the latest event that is in it is 538 to 536 BC. So that's the earliest that it could be written. But again, the authors, all three of these authors, are trying to write history. Just like Matthew, John, and Paul were trying to write about what happened that was history. That's the biblical evidence. Now let's see what Assyrian evidence there is to support this story. There is a book that is called The Royal Inscriptions of Sennacherib, King of Assyria. This is part 3, I think, of a 5-volume set. There are 2 volumes on Sennacherib. And I traced this down and read the whole book. It's about 400 pages, 8.5 by 11. And it tells one series of history that they have found 38 copies of it. What these Assyrian kings did is when they'd build a building, they'd put in it one of these, I'll show you one of them in just a minute, one of these prisms that told about the reign of King Sennacherib from the beginning until his end. And so when we come to that, it looks like this. This one is called the Taylor Prism. It is named after the person, I think it was, that found it, but I'm not sure whether it was that or the person that got it to the museum. It is displayed in the British Museum. I had a mistaken idea about this prism that I need to clarify. I thought that there was one existing Taylor prism, and others were just copies of it in the sense of hiring somebody today to make a copy of it. That's not true. This Taylor prism tells about the military adventures of Sennacherib, and every time you had a new one, you had to update your prism. And so you might have one of them that goes records 1 through 8 of his campaigns, and toward the end it might be 12 to 14. But all of these that I'm looking at, the ones that are most relevant to this one, they all are dated, look at the date, 691. How far is that from 701? 10 years. And you're beginning to have records that are being shown not only in the Taylor Prism, but there's one also in the Israel Museum. Looks pretty much the same. And it has about the same information. It came from 691 to 690. And the prism is called the Annals of Sennacherib. The key details on it are inscribed in an Akkadian cuneiform. It details 8 of Sennacherib's military campaigns. It notably records Hezekiah's failure to submit to the Assyrian yoke, the capturing of the Judean strongholds, and the extortion of heavy tribute. The historical significance is it complements the Bible accounts of 2 Kings 18:19, Isaiah 36:37, and 2 Chronicles 32. I copied and pasted that from what is on display in the Israel Museum. And so that's how they describe it. They don't say anything about the miraculous delivery either. Because even in Israel, they are men that are primarily atheists teaching Bible. Does that sound contradictory to you? But I'm telling you, that's what you've got. Now, closer home, you've got another one up there at the University of Chicago. And it, too, dates to about 689. That makes it 12 years past the time when it was done. And all the content is virtually identical. I want you to read with me what this prison, and like I said, they're identical in content, except mistakes where scribes made mistakes, and they're all saying the same thing. And it comes like this: I surrounded, conquered, and plundered the cities El Teca and Tamnah. Probably Timnah, Timneh, probably would be what we'd see in our Bible. I approached the city of Ekron, and I killed the governors and nobles who had committed crimes and hung their corpses on towers around the city. I counted the citizens who had committed the criminal acts as booty, and I commanded that the rest of them who were not guilty of crimes or wrongdoing, to whom no penalty was due, be allowed to go free. And then he says, I brought out Paddy, their king, from the city Jerusalem, and placed on him the lordly throne over them. Then I imposed upon him payment in recognition of my overlordship. Now note the implications that has for what Hezekiah's been doing. He had that group knocked off one of the kings that Sennacherib had appointed. And he was being held in prison in Jerusalem. And now Sennacherib's coming down and he's going to straighten things out. And Hezekiah is shaking in his boots. And he goes up there with tribute money, and he goes up there with Paddy, and still that's not enough to satisfy Sennacherib. That's the pickle that he's in. A little later, it says, moreover, as for Hezekiah of the land Judah, who had not submitted to my yoke, I surrounded and conquered 46 of his fortified cities, fortresses and smaller settlements in their environs, which were without number, by having ramps trodden down and battering ramps brought up, the assault of foot soldiers, sapping, breaching, and siege engines. I brought out of them 200,150 people, young and old, male and female, horses, mules, donkeys, camels, oxen, sheep, and goats, which were without number, and I counted them as booty. So you got all this statement already made. He comes to Hezekiah. As for Hezekiah, I confined him inside the city of Jerusalem, his royal city, like a bird in a cage. That's an interesting image of a walled city, isn't it? He wouldn't be able to freely go out and come in. He had to stay in there and live off whatever was there. And he said, I set up blockades against him and made him dread exiting his city gate. I detached from his hand the cities of his that I'd plundered, and I gave them to Mittenti, the king of the city Ashdod, Paddy, the king of the city Ekron, and Silibel, I've never met him, the king of the city Gaza, and thereby made his land smaller. Now, when you look at all that information that we've gathered from their records, and you put it over here beside what we have happening in 2 Kings 18, Look at the similarities. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I've done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I'll bear. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house. At that time, Hezekiah stripped the gold from the king's house. I lost my place there. From the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts that King Hezekiah of Judah had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria, but it didn't satisfy him. He's trying to buy it off. Now, there's one aspect of this that we see as well, this confirmation of the Egyptian help of Tirhakah. And the only thing that there's difference between what is said by Sennacherib and what is said in the Bible, and I'm not going to duplicate this again, is that there was just, one of them said it was 30 talents of gold and 800 talents of silver, and the other one says it was 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And there's no way to independently assess which one is right. People that believe in the inspiration of scriptures don't have that problem. We would give more reliance to the word of God. So here it's Hezekiah with this invasion at him. And Hezekiah prepared for war. There are 5 steps that are listed here in it. I'm not sure you can read them. That's all right, because I've got a bigger chart, a bigger one on each of them. First thing it is, he took counsel from Isaiah. And that was a wise thing that he did. Then he stopped the water so they would be sure that they'd have a water supply. He strengthened the city. He stored up supplies. He trusted in the Lord. Look at what the text says. In 2 Kings 20:20, the rest of the deeds of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made the pool and the conduit and brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? Now, when you go to the city of Jerusalem, now this one pictures the walled city as it was back then. Do we have a pointer on this thing? What's the pointer?
I don't know if it has one.
It doesn't have one. Well, right over here is the Gihon Spring, and it's bringing water over here to the lower part where the king's palace is built. It's 1,750 feet long. And when I walk through it, there are places where your shoulders are almost having to make you turn like this. If you're bigger this way than the other way, it's harder. But at any rate, water would come time, depending on how much is flowing at the time. We were being hit about up here when you went. And there's a very important inscription at the end of that tunnel where the workers that were digging it were telling about the 2 teams going like this toward each other, and one of them would get to the point where that they could hear the cutting of the land out of it and taking it out on the other side, and they started digging toward each other. So right in the middle of the tunnel, you got this L-shaped crook in it. But at any rate, that is confirmed by archaeology itself. A second thing that is said about it, and I'm not going to read all of this, drop down to the 5th line from the bottom of that quotation. Why should the kings of Assyria come and find much water? He set to work resolutely and built up all the wall that was broken down and raised towers upon it And outside it, he built another wall. He's trying to get ready for what he sees coming. And when you go to Israel today, they'll take you over there and show you this wall that was built. And it looks like this. And you're up here looking down on it because the layers of civilization since then are built up that much that you have that. But here's the size of this wall. Hezekiah's broad wall is a massive ancient defense fortification. I'm quoting again what is posted in some of the documents I've read. And I've seen this wall and been there. It's in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem's old city. It was built in the 8th century BCE. The width of that wall is 23 feet, 7 meters. He's building that thing to protect himself from the invasion of Assyria. You see the point we're laying the evidences that we have for this being a historical incident that happened? Let's go on before or later. In Isaiah 22, Isaiah had rebuked Hezekiah. Listen to what he said. He's taken away the covering of Judah. In that day, you looked to the weapons of the house of the forest, and you saw that the breaches of the city of David were many. You collected the waters of the lower pool, and you counted the houses of Jerusalem, and you broke down the houses to fortify the wall, and you made a reservoir between the two walls for the water of the old pool. But did you not look to him who did it, or see him who planned it long ago? What is he saying?
Didn't trust in God.
You ought to trust in God instead of doing all these things. But Hezekiah was a busy man. This is a storage jar that is, you can tell that the archaeologists found it, and in the process of getting it out, it had broken. And so they hire these people that put it all back together. And this jar is about that high, and it's got a stopper or cover on it, probably about that 5 to 6 inches, so you can get things in and out of it. But what makes this one unique is one of these handles have this handle stamped. And what it says on the stamp is Lamelech, for the king. Now, 2,000 of those handles have survived to be found by archaeologists. Usually one of these jars had 4 of them on it. So that's about 500 jugs that are represented. But it shows us the physical preparation Hezekiah was making to deal with this problem that was coming to him. So he's getting it all laid out and set up. Now, we do not have letters from what happened in Assyria, but we have letters from what happened in the Babylon invasion in 586 and 7. They look like this. They're called the Lachish letters. And what you had, Lachish was out here, and these people were communicating. They didn't have papyrus. They picked up these broken pieces of pottery, wrote their messages on them. And one of the most significant ones there must have been something that they would have seen over and again. It says, "And let my Lord know that we're watching for the signals of Lachish." This is somebody writing to Lachish. "According to all the indications which my Lord hath given, for we cannot see Azekah." So there's these people with the invasion going on and the war there. They can't pull out their cell phone and call each other. They can't communicate by horses going over there to take the message, except put it on something like this and get it over there the best way you can. That's how they communicated with each other. Now, when we come down to the end of the royal inscriptions, the one thing you do not have, none of the Assyrian historical records state that the Assyrian king Sennacherib captured Jerusalem. Why? He didn't do it. And how many of our presidents in any country brag about the battles they lost? You don't do that. So we have that much evidence from the Assyrian. There's another one that falls in here. Who knows Herodotus? Anybody heard of it? Who is that young lady?
There's just a Greek historian who's not very accurate.
You have any idea what years he? Well, I've got it up there for you. You know it's 425. Now, Herodotus, as said, a Greek historian, but he goes over there to see what's going on, and he's writing about their history. And he's not as exact as Isaiah and them are, but look what he said happened down here. He said, beginning at the first line, after this, Sennacherib, king of the Arabians and of the Assyrians, marched a great host against Egypt. He's writing from Egypt as he's talking about this. Then look at the bold type. He's trying to explain why the Assyrians ran back home. It says, then after they came, they were swarmed by night upon their enemies, mice of the field, and ate up their quivers and their bows, and moreover the handles of their shields, so that on the next day they fled, and being without any defense of arms, great numbers fell. That's his explanation of it. 200 years later. But he does realize something significant happened. That's the value of that quotation. Now, we put up monuments ourselves about our military conquest, and some of you have gone to some of them, in, especially around Washington, D.C., but so did Sennacherib. When he came back home, he built him a palace to commemorate all of his successes. And he sounds a lot like our president when he named it, the Palace Without a Rival. Now, this is an artist drawing of what they think it looked like based on what they've dug up from over there. And you'll notice you've got these gates that are going through, and you got this head. Well, I'm going to give you a picture of a true archaeological image that's there. These are called Lamassu statues. And you've got the head of a king, the wings of an eagle, and the body of a lion. And as the picture shows it, you have them going through these gates to go in. And when you get in, you come to this whole wall that came out of this palace. If I'm remembering correctly, it would be pretty much as long as this, over to about this side. And you have these drawings of the battle along all that wall, across the back, and up it. This is our victory that we won in Israel. But why is it Lachish?
Because it wasn't Jerusalem.
He didn't take Jerusalem, and that was the problem. Now, the last part of this is the last few words of this 37th chapter. As for Sennacherib, he departed, returned home, lived at Nineveh, and he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch, his god. Adremelech and Sharezer, his son, struck him down with the sword. lo and behold, you have these documents telling about the death of Sennacherib. Now, look what this in the bold says. On the 20th day of Tebetu, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, his son, killed him during the rebellion. Well, you might say, well, that just says one son. There's another one that says, while I was yet in the midst of my brothers, my older brothers, Arda Musil, that has to be a Dremelech in the biblical text, but I can't pronounce his name, drew the sword against the Sennacherib, king of Assyria, their father, and committed a grievous crime. Now, here we are. We have all this evidence sitting before us. And just let the evidence speak for itself. We got an eyewitness, participant in the events. We've got the history of that nation in two different accounts, in Kings and in Chronicles. You have 3 Assyrian documents within 10 years of this invasion that speak about what happened there. You've got the evidence coming out of Egypt. And you got Assyrian evidence, Egyptian evidence, where the Terhaka goes up there to help them. And then at the end, you have Herodotus coming and telling there was something big happened. We don't know exactly what it was. And then you have the archaeological evidence of all the preparations that King Hezekiah did to get ready for this invasion. And even have the confirmation that Sennacherib's kids killed him, just as God said in his word. Now, this is one of those times where all these little pieces of the puzzle come together and they fit. Coming from different cultures, and the Bible gives us the fullest picture. Well, they wanted me to have a lesson on archaeology. I hope it didn't bore you to death, but it is indeed a lot of times that the Bible is shown to be accurate by what is found on the ground and in the ground at Israel and different parts of the country. Anybody want to make a comment or ask a question before that buzzer goes off? Yes.
Does it seem, and I've seen some things on YouTube and other places, it seems like there's more and more archaeological evidence that supports the scriptures that, I mean, obviously you pay attention to it. Are you seeing a trend like that way where it's coming?
Well, we went through a period of time when everything was denied. But now the evidence is so overwhelming, they can't very well do that.
They can't hold it back.
For example, King David and Saul and Solomon, they're just mythological people. But then all of a sudden you have a document comes up at Tel Dan that says the house of David in it. And you can't ignore that. It had to be that way. Okay, let me turn this off, and I can't believe we got out right on time.